In Forza Horizon 5 S2-Class Road Racing, a lot of players are always using the same 2 or 3 meta cars, which leaves a lot of very competitive cars more or less unused. Some of those cars are very underrated, so I've picked out the top 5 most underrated S2-Class cars for road racing in FH5. Let's get into it. So let's start off with the Dodge Viper Anniversary Edition. This thing is pretty decent all round. It has good grip generated by that big boy wang on the back, and it is also fairly decent top speed and acceleration wise, so it's a good all-rounder and not really ever bad for a track. But at the same time, it often gets beaten by the Mosler MT900S on the speed tracks, and beaten by the likes of the Brabham on the grip tracks. Next up, we have the Koenigsegg CCGT taking up the number 4 spot. Now this thing is super grippy and easily one of the best at the grip tracks, but it just loses out to the Bad to the Blade and the Brabham. It naturally becomes quite understeery when it gets the all-wheel drive swap, so a lot has to be done with the tuning to get rid of that, which does mean you occasionally get caught out by a snap of oversteer as the rear gets light over the crest of a hill. But this thing can definitely fight for wins in online races at the high grip tracks, and even on the more balanced tracks, this thing is right up there. I suppose you could argue that this thing isn't really underrated, as there are sometimes quite a few of these in online races, so at least some people must be not underrating this. But I still feel like not enough people realise just how good this thing is just because it isn't a meta car, and I suppose you could say the same for the Dodge Viper Anniversary Edition. So if you don't think the previous 2 cars are really underrated, well, this car definitely is. It is of course the Ultima 1020 Coupe. You almost never see anyone using this in online races, despite the fact it is right up there. Okay, the Mosler MT900S eats this for breakfast, but you can still be very competitive with this. Its straight line speed isn't that special, and its grip isn't either, but all round it is very good on a nicely balanced track, so it can definitely fight for the wins at the fairly well balanced tracks. Although a majority of the tracks in the game have a bias towards either high grip cars or high speed cars, so on those types of tracks you may have to settle for 3rd or something. But I think for something that can fight for wins and so few people use it, it has to be classified as underrated. In the number 2 spot we have the Apollo IE Welcome Pack Edition. This is a brilliant alternative to the Brabham and the Bad to the Blade because it has a lot of downforce, so at the high grip tracks this is right up there, even though it isn't quite as good as the Brabham and the Bad to the Blade. This is good for online racing though, because unlike the Brabham and the Bad to the Blade, with this thing you aren't such a sitting duck on the straights. So for online racing, where you have to do 3 races with the same car, this is possibly better overall than the Brabham and the Bad to the Blade, because you at least have a chance on the tracks with longer straights. If you're wondering why I'm comparing so many of the cars in this video to the Brabham and the Bad to the Blade, it's because those 2 cars are the absolute meta cars for the high grip tracks in the game. Now lastly, we move on to the number 1 spot, where we've got the Mosler MT900 GT3. This car is super underrated because overall it's possibly even better than the standard Mosler, which is the absolute meta car for S2-Class road racing, if you didn't know already. This is not as good as the other Mosler for the high speed tracks with long straights, and at the high grip tracks both this and the other Mosler get destroyed by the Brabhams and the Bad to the Blades. But nevertheless, this is a very good all-rounder, and it is decent at more or less any track, so it never feels out of place. It can definitely fight for wins online, but it's certainly not a meta at any tracks, therefore very few people use it. Unlike with the standard Mosler, this one is actually best in all-wheel drive configuration, so naturally it does suffer a bit more from understeer, but you'll get used to it as you drive it more. Anyways, that's it for this video. If there are any cars you think I should have included, let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for plenty more Forza Horizon 5 content, and of course, I'll see you in the next video.